Hello. My name is Jacob, Monk 2, Bard 2, Enormous Idiot, and this is my co-host, Eric. Welcome to How to DM the World. Today, we will be talking about writing adventures. So, before we go into that, we have, as usual, a viewer question from someone who's not a viewer. Eric, you run D&D. You are not from America, so you aren't used to the metric system. What measurement system do you use in your D&D sessions, imperial or metric?
I use a bit of both. When describing distances in combat, I use the metric system. But otherwise, I'm using the imperial because it's easier to get along with if you're born in a country who uses the imperial system, as nearly every country in the world does.
Fuck you, America. But yeah, I do exactly the same. Like, I can't visualize distances in imperial, right? So metric it is for most of it. But combat is run in imperial because that is what the 5e rules are based around, and I am way too lazy to change everything in there. But I think that pretty much answers that question, right?
So let's head on with it.
Yeah.
You may have to excuse me.
Man, it's good I'm doing editing on this. Yeah.
When your mom calls you, you know what to do.
Wonderful. Yep. Yeah, I know the feeling, my dude. My mom calls me all the time. So I want to start off with a disclaimer. This episode is called Writing Adventures, right? It is okay to buy adventures and like campaigns. It is absolutely fine. I do it all the time.
There's a lot of good published adventures, such as Storm King's Thunder.
Yeah.
I can clearly recommend that.
Yeah, like there's a lot of good like D&D adventures out there. DM's Guild is a great source for stuff. I used a thing from DM's Guild called Troll Trouble for my Westmarch game like last weekend, and it was wonderful. And they're not all good, but it is absolutely okay because writing this stuff is hard and it takes time. If you are in a situation where you want a specific situation and you don't have time to write an adventure, there is a thing called adventurelookup.com that is really good, and that's what I used to find Troll Trouble. You can be like, I want a adventure from like level 3 to 4 with a troll, and it gives you like a list.
Oh.
And stuff. It's pretty cool. It's not perfect, but it has some stuff. But yeah, that is something we want to get out of the way. Buying stuff is completely fine. You don't have to make everything yourself. There is this like notion that homebrew is the only thing you can do, but
I think the Forgotten Realms is pretty good. The setting currently with all the adventures they publish.
Yeah, and like reflavoring is easy and fine. Like, oh yeah, I just changed the city name and it's in here. Like, Lost Mine of Fandilvor is an amazing starting adventure.
Oh yeah,
I am a really big fan. That's okay. Another important distinction I want to go into before like we start is: are you writing an adventure for yourself to use, or are you writing something that you want to publish? We can only help you with the first thing. Like, we aren't good at this. Or we are good at this, but like neither of us has written a published adventure, right?
No. Like, because my type of writing down adventures is usually way more chaotic than those published.
Part of that distinction is like how to do notation. Because if you're only writing for yourself, there's a lot of freedom you are given, right? You can make sure, okay, I only need one hook because I know who my players are and I know they're going to fucking bite it, right?
Yeah, it makes it certainly a lot more easier if you know your players.
Yeah.
And what your player characters
And that is the thing
are.
we're going to touch on, like, moving forward. And your notation can be vastly different. I think I'm going to screen share stuff from my OneNote notebook with my campaign notes and like show how I do some notation later on. But if you're doing it for yourself, you can do what you feel like and only have the information you feel like you need. And yeah, and that is a thing that will evolve as you write more, right? I remember in the beginning I had tons of stuff I didn't need. For example, I had written down, what like an NPC deals in damage, and he never fought anyone, right?
That's just unnecessary. Just
Yeah.
keep it to the formula and what you need.
Yeah, like have a name and a note of personality, and that's all you need, right? Like in old first edition adventures, it was written down how much gold everyone in the city had and where they kept it, because they were going to loot them.
Murder hobos.
Yep, the game has changed. So, what will be our focus here is like the 3 to 4 hour like adventures that are like the classic D&D episode, right?
And that's not us typically.
Yeah, like there will also be stuff for like if you want to do 20 hours, as we do because we are stupid.
Oh, sometimes we do way more than 20 hours, I would say. But yeah,
Yeah, it's not smart.
it can be
But
a
yeah,
hassle.
we will focus on the like quick in and out stuff, like, and this will both be like one shots and like
And
a
can-
side quest to a campaign and stuff like that.
Like a 3 to 4 hour session
Yeah.
can also be part of a campaign. Just a
Oh
single-
yeah, like it can easily be this is the bad guy's lair, we have to infiltrate it, right?
Yeah. Or it could be a session where the party is focusing on getting the information they need of the corrupt noble in their town.
Yeah, like I noticed a thing in the DMG. It had like specified, are you running a location or an event-based adventure? And I kind of disagree with that philosophy, because I don't think it's black and white, and I don't think they insinuate that in the book, but they definitely like make it seem like that. You need to have both things to do interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, if you don't have the right location, you're not gonna get anything in without
Yeah.
any events.
Yeah, like events like require a villain and stuff like that.
Not at all. It could be
Yeah,
anything.
but like what a villain is, like in quotation marks, it's like an earthquake happens. What is the
antagonist.
villain there, right? Like villain antagonist is kind of the same in D&D. Like that can be everything from a literal guard to like a corrupt merchant fucking with like preparations afterwards and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things can happen. I think we talked about this in the pre-show, but the most important thing you can like sit down and do before you make an adventure is, why am I doing this? And you had a really great line. That is both an in-game question and a meta question, right?
Yeah, it is. And the most common one is still, is it fun?
Yeah. And that answers for both me and the players, right? Or rather, the player characters.
Yeah, because if the players aren't gonna have fun with the sessions, they're not gonna get a whole lot into it or gain a lot from it. And if you're feeling your players are bored, you'll certainly tap out a bit too.
Yeah.
Just overall lessen the experience.
But also there's like, how do I hook my players, right? How do I make sure this is what happens, right? Which you can like change up a bit, like depending on the group, you can be different upfront, and depending on the campaign.
Yeah,
right?
some groups are harder than others, and some player characters are harder than others.
I have noticed in my main campaign, it can be different, right? I usually have like pretty clear goals for you, because that is the kind of game I like to run there. But I leave it pretty free. But like I run a West Marches game currently on a Discord server, and when people like start like arrange a session, I want a goal and an approach, and that is either like, oh, there's this quest on a literal quest board we have, right? Or I want to go investigate this thing I heard about on an adventure. So there I actually know why the players are doing it before I have to prepare it,
Yeah,
which is really smart.
but that differs from player to player.
Oh yeah,
And especially
definitely.
in a main campaign, if you gotta know your player's motive, and if the player character doesn't have the biggest motives, or they have completed some of their goals, it might be harder for their character.
Yeah.
Usually, a lot of player characters like the things, the wonder, the gold.
Yeah.
And other times they do it because they are forced. They want to do it. They have some self-justice,
And-
or
there is definitely some responsibilities on the players to create characters that want to adventure, right?
Like if a player creates a character that doesn't want to adventure, it's gonna drag the whole adventure down.
Yeah. Okay, you stay in the city while the rest of us plays. But at the same time, there is also like the responsibility to the DM to make it appealing, right? Like you can't just be like, there's a dungeon over there. Okay, there are monsters in there. Okay, that sounds horrible. Why would we go there? Like,
Yeah.
it needs to be built up. Someone captured someone that we need back. Oh, there's gold in there. Like, there needs
Like
to be
there's a
some
sacred
sort.
treasure.
Yeah. Like, why are we going into this tomb? Okay, yeah, there might be ghosts and zombies, but the leader of the ancient knights had this magic sword. Okay, right. Depending on the level, that can be enough, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
For some, it might be. It could also be that they
Yeah.
heard of some artifact,
And-
or they heard that a noble or another character wanted this thing and were willing to reward certain
Also-
players.
you also kind of have to note, like, adventures can be pretty much everything. It can both be we are doing dungeon crawling, but it can also be just like we are going to talk with these people, like a murder mystery. That's really, really different from
Yeah, from a dungeon crawl
yeah.
or a political game
yeah.
or political infiltration for
Yeah.
that matter. Even worse.
But yeah, and that depends on your group, what you want to do and how to make these things fit in. But so, how do you make one of these things? So first, you figure out what role is this filling. Is it going to be a side quest of a thing, and what is it like filling? How long do I want it to be? Do I want it to be a challenge for my players, or do I want it to be easy, or do I want it to be just straight down the middle and be like a medium encounter, right?
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Can also just be a little bump on the road for
Yeah.
some storytelling
Yeah.
purposes.
like it is absolutely okay to like have a side quest that is just there to make your like players feel really cool, right?
Nothing better than a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, like it's fun when you, like after struggling for a while, like getting to feel your new powers. And it's I try hard to make sure there are shifts in difficulty, not like game difficulty, but for the risk of death, possibly, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you found that out. You found out why do my players want to do this, and you find out what do they want to get, what will they get if they succeed, right? They rescued the smithy's daughter, right? What do they get if they fail? The smith's daughter is now dead, right?
Yeah, there gotta be consequences too.
Yeah.
For either just... Yeah, the world is still living, to just
Yeah.
say it out.
Like you don't necessarily need consequences, but for me at least, it makes the world feel more real, right? It can sometimes also be a consequence enough that you just don't get the good thing.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a completely fine consequence of not going somewhere, or it could also just be a choice.
Because one of the things, like one of the goals of the DM is to make the players feel important, right? Or at least make them feel like they are living in a real world that they can affect, right? Because that is a large part of the appeal of these kind of role-playing games, right?
Yeah, people want to experience the power to be able to shift worlds and break shit and cause havoc, as well as
Or even just make friends. Like insult people and call them assholes and make enemies. That is also part of it, right?
yeah,
Like there's this moment in most like role players' lives where they are playing and they realize, oh shit, this is not like everything I have tried before. I actually have to like treat this person like a person, right? Like going into a shop. You don't necessarily need to roleplay all that out. So you know what you're doing. Now, you need 3 things at least from the thing I wrote down, what I personally get, is I want the hook for the players, right? I want what's bringing them into this. And that can either be, oh shit, family member or something important to us is going, we want something over here, whatever. And then I want the location mapped out in to some degree, right?
Yeah, you just gotta need, where is this taking place? Is it taking place in the middle of in the northern pole?
Yeah.
Doing a blizzard, or are you out in the desert, or you're in the
And
countryside?
That regards both like battle maps and stuff like that, and just descriptions of the area.
Yeah.
What can they find there? What kind of people are there?
What's the culture like, perhaps? Or what are most people doing? Like, I remember in my campaign when you took out up on to the northern side of the world.
Yeah.
When suddenly you were greeted with a lot more fishermen because there wasn't any vegetation.
Yeah.
They couldn't survive off the land, so they took out to the sea. And
Yeah. And a thing I noticed you do in every campaign I have, like, in every game I have, like, seen you run, you always describe what we are eating.
yeah,
It's a small thing. Like, I usually don't really give a shit, but, like, it's a small thing that digs in my brain and is like, oh, this area is special.
like we can discuss about later. I think we have a later subject about that.
Yeah, probably.
But that's the thing. What I usually do is either build the story inwards and then go out, or outwards and then in with my descriptions of my things. Like if I go outwards, it's my world building fanatic extremism taking over, or inwards and out, it's just a campaign where I then build everything else I know about it out from there.
Yeah. And especially adventures, you can really go in and out, right? You can go, okay, this thing is happening. What do we need to support this, right? Like, for example, okay, we are traveling with a caravan and we are moving from this town to this town and we have to protect this. Okay, we want someone to attack this, right?
No, yeah, sure.
So then we need whatever is attacking, right? Goblins. Goblins is a great choice.
Yeah.
Great.
Could
So
also be-
then we need to plan out how they attack, right?
Are they gonna stick for an ambush, or are
Yeah.
they using their brawn and intimidation?
And how does that impact their culture, right? And why are they doing it? Are they doing it because they need food, or are they doing it because they are evil sons of bitches, right?
Greedy,
Yeah.
hubris.
And
There could be a lot of things.
all of this isn't necessary, but it's a thing I would like to have down. It's because it impacts their personality if you talk to one.
Yeah, it also just help. Like if you know that your bandit captain is fueled with hubris and pride, you'll know he'll rush forward. He won't back down from a fight, and he will be very
And you will describe him differently, right?
yeah, sure.
Like standing with arms wide and yelling like slurs in Goblin, right? All of these things come from that. And then from there, okay, they ambush. The players can just keep going. Or they can like figure this out and go to the Goblin camp, and maybe the Goblin camp are doing this because we don't have food, or normal like food source is like attacked by this troll. Great. Now we have a reason for them to go and kill this troll, befriend the goblins,
If they
get a
want to.
reward. Yeah, they could just ride past, right?
Yeah, they could also just go for taking out the troll. Like it differs. You could befriend the troll, the goblins, or you could try to enthrall them into your little subside community.
And that's the dangerous thing about DMing, right?
Yeah.
That is why we write all these things. Because players are the most unpredictable motherfuckers you will ever meet. Right?
They have a strong tendency to do a lot of weird shit. I have
Yeah.
noticed.
Because that's fun.
Oh yeah, sure. Don't
Right.
get me started on what I do when I'm a player.
Yeah. You are wonderful. And then I have villain/opposition. What is working against your players currently? Right? What is it that's like hurting them? Like, it could simply be a campaign I'm working on. Like, let's go to my West Marches campaign again, right?
Yeah, sure.
I make sure travel is at least seemingly dangerous. that campaign is built around the idea of nature, like the wild is dangerous, right? And that is the opposition in most of it. Currently, you are fighting weird tree men, also known as blights, right?
Blights.
Yeah.
Goddamn blights.
And that is a good, to me at least, a good representation of the forest is against us.
We pissed off the wrong Fae,
Yeah,
perhaps.
right. So like having some sort of opposition is good. And like that could also just be a good antagonist, right?
Yeah, sure.
That like our main campaign had its final arc had them going around hunting dragons, and the main antagonist was this group of like dragons being like, we're going to work together to do this thing. Someone Tiamat, because I like stereotypes, right?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with liking
Oh, yeah.
those.
It worked.
Your players fall right into it.
Yeah, like tropes are a great tool, and it's okay to embrace them, right? But that was their position there. These very large, powerful beings with personalities and stuff. And all of this isn't necessary, right? It could very simply be, like, you could very easily just write down, like, 3 encounters, put some enemies in there. But that's not where this game gets interesting, at least for me, right?
Like, it feels more alive if you get some personalities in or some description on, or you just know a little of how these creatures are acting.
I think the important thing here is we are not going for realism. We are going for plausibility, right?
No, yeah, sure.
I don't need my players to believe that it's real. I need you to believe that it's plausible.
Certainly.
Like it could happen. And that's all we need for that suspension of disbelief, right?
I'm also noticed that I'm quite more vague with my villains currently in most of my campaigns. They have a tendency to be a little more gray area, at least some of them.
Yeah.
Or a little more distant and secretive.
Yeah.
Which I have a thing for, because it makes some campaigns differ.
And that's like completely fine. That's a style thing, right? I have an example written down, like, you can have like a bad guy like Strahd von Zarovich from Curse of Strahd, who multiple times throughout that campaign can just appear like in front of players and be like, oh, you came this far? Like hit them a bit, you're still weak as fuck, and then leave. Right? And that's also a way to do this. There are many ways to do this opposition antagonist thing. But to me, I have it down to have some sort of like personality to the thing, right? It helps me inform their decisions. That is what transforms like my beholder from a stat block to a living being. So I actually want to go through the like example with Curse of Strahd, right? What is the hook of Curse of Strahd?
I honestly don't know.
Great.
I haven't read it.
So I haven't read all of it. But here is at least most Barovia adventures. You are out adventuring. You enter this thick mist. You are now in Barovia, this fucked up gothic horror world. And I think Curse of Strahd, the hook is, there is this person that needs help. But another hook is, we want to get the fuck out of here. Everything here is fucked. We want to leave. And to leave, they need to explore Barovia, and in particular Castle Ravenloft, right? This like city and surrounding area that is really well built out, and then this deeply detailed castle, right? And that is like the two primary things happening. And then it has Strahd, this very interesting villain with like an actual motivation and personality and a lot of stuff like that. And I recommend looking at that if you want that type of villain. It's not for every game. But he is very like, he is not actually the Joker from Batman, but he has that kind of thing where like he's laughing at Batman, right? He's laughing at the heroes that they can't succeed.
Yeah, trying to decrease morale.
Yeah, and
Some
taunt
degree.
them.
Yeah. Nothing better.
Yeah, and all of those things play into the themes of Barovia, which is like hopelessness and fear of the unknown, kinda. That's all great and fine. Now we have some personality, we have a location. Another thing that is not important, but a thing that I like to keep in mind is what in 5e is referred to as the pillars of the pillars of the game.
Pillars
I
of
think.
the game.
Yeah, which is exploration, socialization, and combat. And according to designers, they should be equal. They are not, and that is okay. And that depends on the adventure, right?
Yeah. You can't have a city adventure where the most of the campaign is going to take place in the noble house and then expect a large exploration campaign.
Like, and this is also things like this is why like you talk with your players about what they expect, so they don't bring a barbarian to a murder mystery, right?
Well, it's plausible, but
Like, yeah, but
But
if
it
they
feels
want
out
to
of
go
play.
and kick ass, they are not going to have fun.
yeah, it's going to be a little of a letdown at least.
And this is why I wrote in all caps, cater to your players. Make sure that there is at least one or two places where your characters can show off like why they're cool, right? If you have a bard, let them fucking talk to someone, right?
Or go around town playing music.
Yeah. But like, if we are going dungeon crawling and we have a bard, a great thing I've noticed, at least the Lost Mine of Fendelver does, is when you encounter a monster in dungeons, the box text ends with the monster saying hello, and like approaching them by talking. And not all of them, mostly intelligent stuff, but there's in particular a villain, like a box text that's like, okay, this is the area. You hear inside of your mind, hello, and that ends the box text. So that there is this socialization.
And a possibility for it, because otherwise, if it's a total dungeon crawl, it could be quite.
But dungeon crawling also involves exploration, right?
Yeah, searching
That
for
is-
traps.
Yeah,
and
searching for traps, secret
treasure.
doors. Yeah. Another thing could just be like, there's like a slanted floor, or we need to like climb this thing, or
Like,
like-
there's an obstacle in the way
Yeah.
of the players to get to their goal or the next room,
non-combat obstacles can also be really fun.
if done right.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing to do with new players is I have a like thing written down I use for every time I introduce someone, and it involves three things during travel to the place where things go on. I want some kind of skill check where it's like, okay, can you do a perception check, and just like give some information based on that, because then they learn how to do checks. And then I always have crossing a river. I love telling my players to cross a river, because like that is to me the best exploration encounter. Because players are wonderful at this.
I have a good example of that for not so long time ago not in the Dungeons and Dragons campaign though, but in a Only War campaign.
Only War is
It's set in
a
the
role-playing game in the Warhammer 40k universe where we are playing as the Imperial Guard, which is just normal humans with guns.
They had to cross the river, and I remember the sergeant, you, thinking the best decision is clearly to cut down a tree.
Because we did not have rope. Second, we had to carry fragile equipment that wasn't waterproof.
Anymore. Due to
We did not have a wrench, okay?
recent events. Well, they chose to cut down the tree, and then suddenly the medics decided that he would use his knife instead of letting the sergeant use his chainsaw. And
So, yeah, we cut down a tree, and a guy took a knife and went out in the tree and cut branches off so that we wouldn't stumble over them while walking over.
well, until he fell in the water.
Yeah. And it is one of those great encounters because the price for failure is hilarious.
It's getting wet.
Yeah, and that is always funny. Just, I will gladly blanket say that is always funny. it's always funny to see someone get pushed in a pool. Right?
I leave that to you.
And that's a great exploration encounter. A social encounter I love is outside of monsters talking to you, just whilst traveling, just meeting a person who's out there. I remember in your campaign, we were traveling someplace and we met some fish people going the same place. And we just kind of talked to them and pulled information out of them and enjoyed their personalities. There is something to be said about just talking to people. That's really fun.
It's why we play role-playing games.
Yeah.
It's the ability to get into your character, and I think socializing is a great part of the game besides the other two pillars,
Yeah.
but exceptionally in when you got to a more calm situation. Like, not everything needs to be life and death. And the potential to just meet someone. Or you want to go to talk to the shady guy in the back who's clearly got something to sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do it.
Like, all of those situations are really fun. And especially if there's a social character, I try to make sure that there's at least one of those in every adventure I do, and at least one exploration-based thing. And then fill most of the rest with combat.
Yeah. Pretty well.
And that is not because combat is the best part of the game.
But it's what most players expect in the start.
It is the problem-solving mechanic we have.
It's the easiest.
Yeah, and most of combats in like my games are like they can be like evaded and overcome using the other two pillars, right? They can be evaded by talking to people or by sneaking around them.
Setting up traps.
Yeah, like there's a lot of exploration and okay, we are setting up an ambush. How are we going to do this?
Yeah, I would say since I played Barbarian in your last main campaign, I would say we actually used a fair amount of exploration or socializing to get out of combat or evade combat. I remember specifically a time where I just walked up and said I was a carpenter and I was lost, and then suddenly I was lucky on my rolls and. Well,
that gets way more funny by knowing that we were in an underwater city where, like, they knew who everyone was and you were Dragonborn.
Yeah.
And their reaction wasn't believing him. They were like, what?
Well, I was like,
yeah.
Screw this. I remember it was because the others was trying to make some advanced plan. I was like, okay, we just need to get around the guards. How about I just make the guards come out to us and just try to be peaceful at the start? And then I just walked up.
The best stories come from solutions that aren't obvious, right? And it sounds like we really love exploration and socialization. My favorite role-playing moments are in combat, I think. I remember on that same adventure in that underwater city, we were in a church and fighting a spellcaster. You ran up the stairs of a clock tower following that spellcaster. He had fly on himself and jumped out the window to fly. He didn't want him to get away. So you jumped out the window with, like, you threw a rope at one of your friends.
Like the monk was beside me. I was like, I'm playing a barbarian because I love combat. But the monk was beside me and it was my turn. I'm like, catch. And then I just ran out and bashed the
And that is also a great role-playing moment, right? That shows your character being like, yeah, I'm going to do everything to accomplish this goal.
Yeah, I almost died because the other guys wasn't able to pull me up.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think my favorite combat we had in your campaign recently that I remember was us getting broken into at a home by assassins. And my character sleeps naked because I like to joke about it, so I didn't wear any armor. So I put on my cape and grabbed my weapon and ran out and attacked those people. And I think that's the highest density of dick jokes I have ever made in my life.
Yeah, there certainly was a lot.
That's fun. And establishing combat styles is also interesting. And that's why when I make adventures, I try to include like those moments where these cool things can happen in combat, right? That is one of the things I discovered relatively quickly while playing. Combat gets monotonous after a while.
It can become. You need to fresh it up a bit.
Yeah, just having trees to hide behind.
Or an environmental hazard.
Yeah.
Blizzards. Sandstorms.
A great moment that just established that is the first session from our West Marches game. In the first combat encounter, they were in a forest and there was a small lake. It wasn't anything fancy, but our lizardman player with a swim speed jumped into the lake and moved through it to attack someone. And just that added a lot of personality to that. When you are building adventures, that is why we detail, like we focus on the location so much, so we can make those things.
Like I remember from my campaign where you were infiltrating a castle that was half molded into an iceberg.
Yeah.
Where your approach was like, oh, well, it's molded into the iceberg. What's the best way of approach? Definitely not the front gate. Let's try climb the iceberg.
Front gates aren't good.
Then you succeeded rather well. I remember one of you guys dropping some explosives.
Yeah, we did really well, and we like stealth attacked the guards, and someone took a grenade and threw it.
I would like to say that was not the guards.
Yeah. What? What? Were they just having a smoke break? Did we just attack a couple of dudes having a smoke break?
You don't know. You never asked.
No. Well, we didn't ask because we killed them.
Yeah, like one of the guys panicked and jumped out of the...
Yeah. It was bad news. But we didn't die.
You almost did.
Yeah.
At the
Only
following
one of
encounter.
us got crazy.
Yeah.
That wasn't that time, but...
He kind of asked for it, I would say.
The best warning I can give, don't become friends with Lovecraftian things.
Like, if you wander into a lair with a living kraken and you know it's still alive, you're not that smart. Especially if you tried to kill it last time.
You know, it was a ballsy decision, and to be fair, there was magic items in there.
I know. I definitely know.
That is why players are horrible, because if we see a magic item, we'll go for it. But yeah, like the large note with that was just cater to your players. If you know you have a monk, have a pool of water they can run over, have like a wall they can run up, right? If you know there's a bot, make sure that there's someone they can talk to, or something like that, right?
Oh.
If there is a rogue, put a trap in there. My best tip for traps, there is no trap unless they search for one. Like, it works wonderfully. Yeah, someone just describe things, like, even things that aren't necessary. The last West Marches game I ran, they were like, oh, there's something controlling these 3 people. Okay. And they just attacked random people. And I clearly remember one of them, the bard went over and poked a tree. And I immediately answered, roll a dexterity saving throw. They rolled a 14. So they evaded getting stung by nettles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just doing that to keep them on edge. Also because, first of all, it's very funny to me. But they had no real clue what they were doing. And just not telling them anything was useful for me.
Like,
yeah.
I remember a specific moment where I described something for you, and you immediately, all the players were immediately like shocked and, oh, this is a bad thing, because I was describing how they have just recently entered the castle they had cast a rebellion into between a lower class race and a higher class race. And while getting in here, they noticed that down a hallway that's filled with corpses, armor, weaponry, a couple of elves standing around there, running away from the place. And they go in another road, another hallway, and they kill some son of a bitches. And then they walk outside again, and they look down the hallway. And the hallway is now clean.
So, one of the reasons we were really afraid of that, because we knew this place was fucking filled with mimics.
Yep.
So we were like, oh, yeah, let's not touch that.
Like, it was hinted to you a single time
Yeah.
with a chair, I remember.
Yep. Was it like an old man getting attacked by one, or was it Margaret just like poking a chair and getting bit by it?
I think it was Margaret poking a chair.
Yeah. It was kind of hilarious.
And then you found the treasure room, or you have seen the treasure room already.
So the problem with treasure rooms is that they sometimes attack you.
Yeah, you noticed that.
Yeah, just was like a long thing that came out and we just noped.
Yeah, you just know.
Yeah.
Like, there was at least more gold than you could count on your hands and put in your pockets. But,
I very clearly remember being dividing players between me and our gnome fighter, who just like stood back, and the other two just, oh, but there's loot, and we just no.
And they also just killed a random guard trapped in there because he was like, oh, if I move, I die. Okay, let's throw something at him.
Yeah. So, where did that come from? That came from you, like, knowing that location very well.
Yeah.
And, like, extrapolating. Okay, so they have these amulets that signify their membership here. Okay, what?
They're also wearing uniforms. And I remember because of a former incident where one of the players, our bard, was... he was a bit of a strangler and searching around town for something to do while you guys were on your merry way to a castle for the first time. Castle in the iceberg, exploring.
Yeah.
And he went around town and trying to search for a job or something to do. And he went in and he flirted with some guards.
Yep.
And that played a bit of a part because... as most of the party noticed, was that a lot of the townsfolk was also working a side job at this castle they went to, where they started a rebellion. So the only reason they actually got out of it was because of their bard have previously flirted with a female guard.
Beautiful, like, putting together of that like respect. But yeah, like, but the mimic thing came from like, okay, we have these amulets and these uniforms. How would they like guard that? Okay, the mimics don't attack people with like uniforms. And that extrapolated to, oh, there's this treasure room that the actual people can use, but they have a guard. And I really like that idea. I like a lot of my stuff comes from just sitting down, having this idea, and just extrapolating from there. A couple of things I want to discuss about like the specific parts. Like, if you have a hook, I like to have 2 to 3 things like that focus on the player. I like to try have someone the players like, being like, oh yeah, this will be interesting, go do that, and having something affecting the players there, like personally, and a third one, having something rad be there or something exciting be happening. I'm not sure like what your approach to that is.
It differs because...
like it very much depends on what's happening there.
Yeah, and also of your player group, because in my campaign I have noticed that you guys are clearly one of the guys who could just chill out and retire all your characters nearly.
Yeah.
To some degree.
And that changed last session, right?
Oh, yeah. With the I would say with the exception of the bard. The bard has a soft heart of causing trouble and inviting undead liches to his house.
It was entertaining, but yeah, it very like definitely depends on your players, and that is one of the things that is really hard with writing things for other people. I watched an interview with Jeremy Crawford, I think one of the people writing the D&D adventures, and that and a guy called Mike Mills who runs that, and something called Acquisitions Incorporated. You might have heard of it. It's not that big.
No, I have not.
It's a very popular real play thing that happens at PAX. But they talked about like how do you write hooks for player groups you don't know about. So that is why in the D&D adventures there are like 8 or something stupid, so that you can personalize to those players. Another thing I like, especially for one-shots, is a term I like in media called in medias res. Like, when you just start in the middle of the thing. There's something to be said about you are a group of adventurers. Like, we are running a one-shot. You ask the characters to make a group of adventurers. They are friends. They know each other. They've worked for, like, ages. And they start in front of the dungeon, right? Like, there's no reason to have them in a city and get the quest and walk over there.
No, it's simple.
Yeah, you can have that to get role-playing and stuff. But it's also nice to just do that. That is, like, the only thing I think I did really good with my first D&D session was starting like that. They were on a caravan, and something happened.
Yeah, I remember that quite well. We just need to write down a reason why we were traveling on this caravan to this current town.
But that even works if we are in a tavern. But like, it's something happens, or you are somewhere where you have to do a thing. I have always been fascinated with the idea of starting you roll initiative. I like that beginning because it gets people's attention. You don't want to do this with people who haven't played before, but with a regular group, it gets people's attention, and you can really describe combat in an interesting way. Pro tip for doing that: have initiative rolled for every NPC there beforehand.
It will help.
So you just have to write them in and then slowly describe what's happening. A great thing for that would be some kind of natural catastrophe thing. That would be beautiful for that. And the third thing I've written under hook is player-driven. This plays into my recent fascination with the West Marches. Where, I don't need a hook because this is something you want to do. And the smart people would have noticed, why would they want to do that? Because I already have them hooked. They just don't know I did it to them. Right? This is a thing they wrote in their backstory.
Yeah, that works.
They discovered this book about Minotaurs, and now they want to go learn about Minotaurs.
Oh, that one, I remember that one. It actually made him quite frightened, even because he was raised in a Minotaur village, but because he since then stole the book about the Minotaur lore, he was like, well, I'm not gonna go visit that again. Yeah, that is the best way to like get a plot hook in there. It is also the hardest way to do it. I would say if a player has a I remember, especially with my background, it led to a lot of the things we ended up doing in the campaign. It made a stronghold because my player ideals and bonds and goals was to rebuild his family. So I ended up building a town, and that ended up being like the main base of the campaign. And I remember my character follows some barbaric traditions. Yeah. So when I was told that my wife was gonna have a kid, I was in the game. I went out and did some rituals. Yeah. And it wasn't really because there was a world-ending threat or I was getting paid for it. I went out and did it because it was what my character wanted to do. Yeah. And I suspect that you enjoyed that a lot. Oh, it was fun. Exactly. Right. And I actually changed a rule in my game about magic item crafting. It was a thing I noticed in Xanathar's Guide to Everything during the magic crafting. It's like, have them go get something so they can craft the thing. And there's like a CR range for the thing. And like, in my West Marches campaign, someone hit level 3 so they can start crafting things. And I gave them 2 things. The Heart of a Quickling and the Eye Stalk of a Spectator. That man wanted that so bad. Because he's like, okay, I can make this now, I just need this thing. And he didn't know where to find it. I had him meet a Quickling on the adventure. Luckily, he could kill it. But else he was like, then he would know where are they. Goddamn Quickling heart. Yeah. Never stop pumping. Yeah. That's like why it was for an item that increased dexterity, like gauntlets of ogre power, but for dex. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I felt like that fit incredibly well. Yeah, it did. So yeah, and
that is a great way to make these player-driven plot hooks, right?
I also remember in your main campaign with another player-driven plot hook, or we had actually 2 specifically besides mine. Mine was very minor and mostly socializing and actually exploration.
Yeah.
But we had one with our elven wizard who didn't want to visit home, but actually he was just waiting for it in out of character because it was a player-driven story.
He was very interested in exploring this part of his character, and I get that. Because when we did, it was incredibly fun and interesting.
Yeah, it was a good run.
Yeah.
I would also say with our tiefling player, our tiefling sorcerer meeting back and going to the abyss to form a contract that wouldn't just destroy us immediately with sickness or being rendered into pieces.
Yeah, it was quite fun. And as well, she's running a, what's it called? An orphanage in one of the towns. And I had a, bad guy, an antagonist in one of the early things who brought you guys on an adventure and stole the loot in front of them and got the fuck out of there. And they met him later on and were like, oh shit, he has some money. But they found out he ran an orphanage. And she has now married that person and is helping running that orphanage, right?
Yeah.
And that is a great plot hook. If I haven't utilized it a lot because I didn't want to drag too much on it, but I have done a little bit. But you can do, when they find these things that they are really attached to, if you just curl a hair, you can do a lot, right? And you have to be careful about that because that is the reason why no D&D characters have parents, right?
I think it's a bit bad to just kill both parents.
Yeah.
Don't use them as a murder machine.
Yeah.
For revenge plots. It's also because it just detaches the characters, in my opinion.
But it's okay to threaten them, or threaten the city that they live in.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But yeah, that is the player-driven things that I find really fascinating. But yeah, the magic item crafting thing is great. So I have a thing noted about locations and how you note them down. I have this is going to be a bit on a slider. So we have to the left, very bare bones. This is the city's name. This is how it's shaped. It's a city. There's boats, and this bad guy lives there. And I have run stuff off of those kind of notes.
It works. It's good for simple towns or just the place you're going to be in quickly.
If you don't need to know more. If a thing I often do is, if I suspect I'm going to introduce this thing but not have them go there, I just prepare that so they can tell you about this town. And I only need to know the background information because they only need to know the background information, right?
Then you can build the rest from there, and that's the inwards and out
And
perspective.
then we move to the right, where we have an overview. You have a list of names of people in the town. There are roles of the town and locations. There's is this a monarchy? What is their primary industry? How does the town look? What is it built like?
I think you have seen my notebook before.
Yeah.
The lists of names and taverns.
It's a bit
and
crazy.
buildings
And that would be moving more to the right, where that is what I noticed as detailed, where you have a system. You have all the major NPCs written down. Do they have personalities? There are locations in there. Maybe you actually make a map of the city. Right.
I haven't really found a good map for creating cities yet. Map generator.
Yeah,
or creator.
Incarnate is good for large stuff, but the best thing I have found is Photoshop, but I'm not an artist, so
I have no clue how to use Photoshop. I just draw things on paper.
Yeah, and that is a thing you slowly pick up, right? But yeah, where you are on that spectrum, that is both on your personality and what you want. Specifically for an adventure, I am somewhere in the middle. Where if the adventure is it's going on in the city, I have its name and some major NPCs and some locations, and that's about it. But for example, your hometown is really detailed, where I have most people written down and their personalities and like what are the locations actually.
It's quite hard if you're going to a major city and be able to wash up with all the names. I'll just say.
Yeah. But you can mostly ignore the farmers, right? Who is running the large general store? Is it a chain? Is there like a competing thing going on? Stuff like that.
What's the name of the tavern?
And a lot of this stuff comes up when the people ask for it.
Yeah.
Did I know what the ground was composed of when he asked for it on the like place of land he got? I didn't, but I knew when he asked me, right?
And like compromising and making
The
things up
important
as you
part
go.
is writing the stuff down.
Oh yeah, afterwards.
Okay, I am going to share a little story with you. In my West Marches campaign, one of the players was asking, hey, the guy who put this up, can I talk with the shopkeeper? And I was like, give me 2 seconds. I have it written down somewhere. I did not have that written down. That name was something I hadn't thought about. So I used like Fantasy's name generator and went online and just kind of, I'm really sorry, I have it written down somewhere. And like was pretending like I was looking through my laptop for notes. But I was making it up there. Right. And that is definitely a thing you can do. That is a lot better than saying, oh, he doesn't have a name. But that is part of making the world seem real. There's a thing on villains. What are the like personalities? How's that? Right? Who are they? And that is a very like personal thing. And that is only if there's like one. But if you have a faction that is the bad guys, you also want a leader there, right? But what are their personalities? How are the like regular thugs going to treat people, right?
Or the mercenary hired to take over a town.
But the 3 most important things there, like personality is important, but it's okay. It's okay to do without. What are their goal or their goals, right? What do they want to do? Why are they doing this? What are their methods? Because, they want to take over the town, but they aren't killing anyone. They only knock the guards unconscious. That adds some personality, that adds some intrigue. And what if the players join the bad guy? See, there is the option of, he kills them. Fine. But what if you want to do something more interesting? I don't have it detailed. I do not write out a like emergency scenario, but I think about it. And I think that's, at least for my players, that's important to have. But like it doesn't need to be, they joined them, but like, do they talk to the bad guy? How is that conversation going to be? Is he just going to call them foolish mortals, or is he actually going to try to convince them to join him, right?
I think two major things, because I have currently 2 villains. I know the first one, the one called the Alchemist, your first villain. It wasn't really her that was the main thing about that, but perhaps the noble that was assisting her, because I remember all of you players getting cheated by her, and only when it was a bit too late to get out of the ambush, you were like, oh fuck, we're actually getting fucked up here. Another one I remember was when you created your own villain, and the bard have seen that now when assassins hired to kill him broke into your house and killed him. But yeah, I was currently thinking about the gnome. But also another fun fact: when the last session in your campaign, my character was originally going to side with the dragons if all the other players were going to be unconscious.
Yes.
Like my character would sacrifice himself in the service of getting those 3 getting the hell out of there, and I would service him without question. But and also that's a good way to, instead of getting a complete TPK, you get something to work with for your next campaign. Yeah,
and I think I remember one of your character's ideals of things being like, whatever you can do to create the like best outcome is like worth doing.
Yeah,
right.
That was pretty much what I played.
Yeah.
If I get the information I need, it works.
Yeah.
Or if I achieve my goal.
Yeah. And not all of these things are important to have, but it's nice to have around. And it helps me wing it.
Yeah, it's good to have like in the back of your mind some ideals and
Yeah.
just a couple of thoughts.
So a thing I wanted to do was share some of my notes from my OneNote. Are you up for that?
You do you?
Yeah. So let's get into old session notes. A lot of this is like mixed in Danish and English, right? I'm looking for thing. Expedition to Mount Penis. Yeah. So that's not the thing I'm thinking of. So this is a thing I named the Siege of Briarwall. They were told we are being attacked by zombies by one of the characters' mother after contacting them. They knew that a bad dragon was in the area, and they waited a long time doing something else, and he attacked this town. So here's how I planned it. I made like 5 locations, which are like written in on this poorly drawn map, like and numbered out, and have written them down. So there's a mansion and someone attacking a what's it called? Like a refuge? Yeah, a church that was used as like this emergency housing thing. And some spirits that supported the city were fucking about, and there was a war going on here, and specifically a person being tortured, and someone was burning the surrounding forest down. Those were like the 5 encounters I had written down. I had some random encounters in case it was necessary. Some random loot to have, stuff, things like that. But in the like individual things, I don't have a lot. Like, oh, there's this mansion, defended and its library. So in here, Hydronarch's Ecstasy, they are attacking the barracks that is used as like emergency housing, and that's what's happening, right? This is literally one line. Lake outside of town, water spirits. That is all I had there, right? Because that is all I needed. This is the like shelter, and that's that. That was all I needed for that. But other stuff has a lot more. This is from another thing we were doing, where they were in Dothion, which is part of Butopia, it's called, which is a plane that's
one of the upper planes.
It's kind of a sandwich. It's complicated, but they went there, and it's a very lawful place, and they went to talk with some priests of Bahamut. So I had some personalities written down here, and how they were ranked in the church, how they entered this section of the adventure, and how they exited. Because I structured this a bit like a flowchart. Because that was somewhat what they needed. There was a stat block for a combat that could happen. And that's about it. Climbing a tree. And then I had written down what the various other bad guys were doing at that moment. In case you went there.
Yeah.
Because that is all I needed. I'm going to try and find a note I made for an old time. Yeah, it was yes. Why did I skip that? But yeah, some few notes for people being there. A short description of the city. And a short note for a random encounter. But what I only really needed was this picture. This was the primary note I had for that session. And it has like the main church and 2 locations on it. But just this image was what I needed in my head to actually run this. And then I also have towns written down and have a lot of stuff. So if I was like, they are going to the city of Herald, then I would have these notes, and I would likely expand on them if it was needed. But yeah, that is how I lay my stuff out using OneNote.
Yeah, I'm quite new to OneNote,
Yeah.
and my notes are a bit mashed together.
Yeah.
I'm currently working on sorting my things out because I write a couple more notes than you do.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff in here, and I have this like this is my front screen I use with names that are important, small things I want to remember, continent names, like the Pantheon, in case I need. Oh, he's a cleric. What's that? And stuff like that. It really depends on you and what you are doing. Up here, I have an XP table written down. I'm not actively using it, but it helped me design encounters for this level. And I didn't use XP from leveling up. I used milestones, but I used the XP values to kind of keep myself honest. To make sure you were either like taking the right amount of time or like not spending too long. Yeah, it's very chaotic, but I have that. And yeah, adventure notes can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be, and it all depends on your DM style.
I would say to keep it down a little.
Yeah.
Going too detailed is never going to be the perfect strategy, and you're going to have a lot of hassle, because if you suddenly plan out perhaps a certain dungeon, or a way your players need to do it, you make it either you end up making it a bit more railroad, or you're going to be disappointed because, well, your material is not going to be used. You can perhaps reuse it. That's the good thing about it, but well, it's just you put in a lot more work than you actually need to.
Yeah, a lot of this like stuff comes from me analyzing what I have done in the past. I'm supposed to cut a irony golem. Okay, that is a thing that is there as a joke to myself. It deeply depends, but currently they could take them. But yeah, like the power of our characters, it slowly increases.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, in my campaign, you have no troubles in taking over minor towns. You could do that without any problems. Perhaps the chieftain of the guard or the head of the guard could be a severe problem, but currently in your hometown, half of the town is wrecked. Well, I remember you fighting an ice giant and a right, and you were devastated, but you were mostly devastated because all the spellcasters jumped down into a hole alone with the two fighters standing
To be fair,
on top.
I wasn't a spellcaster.
Oh yeah,
I was a rogue tank.
You have a few levels in sorcery. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is what happens when you split the party.
Oh, it was just because they were too slow.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know it was an ambush, and you knew you were in the place where the walls and the doors shifted constantly. Then suddenly the two fighters were panicking because they could hear a fight emerging from underneath them, and they weren't able to go to them.
I actually think you handled that perfectly. Like, they had their own turn initiative where they just ran around trying to get down there.
Yeah, it was quite fun, especially because most of the ways to shift the tunnels were places they didn't want to go because it was in small...
Environmental stuff.
It was they knew a lot of spiders were there, kind of giant spiders, and they knew, or they found out that a lot of the ways to change the setup of the dungeon they were in, they had to crawl down these shafts made by the spiders, which they didn't like. Well, the gnome fighter, she ended up doing it anyway.
She was doing wonderfully.
And she was the reason you got back up at all.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I remember your wizard taking like half his HP in one hit from the ambush because the ice giant threw a rock at him.
Yeah.
And he, to be mildly honest, he wasn't quite happy about it. But
yeah, that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Like my largest problem with that fight was that I went in injured.
Oh yeah.
Because okay, so here's the thing: I play role-playing games to do stupid stuff. I saw a large bottle of giant booze and I fucking drank it.
That was...
It was hilarious.
Like, a thing I also found quite funny at that session was one of the fighters keeping watch that night, and he sees this shadow of a man standing out in the woods amidst zombies netted to webs spun by giant spiders, just standing there watching the party, who had set themselves up in a couple of trees and keeping a heavily watched. And he noticed this guy. He's like, "Hello," and he jumps down to this guy. He doesn't really go close to him. He just tries to. Can I see how he looks under his hood? No, you can't. Do you have dark vision? Yeah. Well, he's still hiding it. He's not showing his face. He didn't really do anything about it. The fun thing was that this was the right coming in and looking up on where you were to setting up an ambush, which could easily be avoided. But, well, your fighter thought, well, sometimes a hooded figure just stands in the woods staring at you in the night amidst giant spiders and zombies. So he just went back to keeping watch and didn't tote anyone in the party.
We were happy with them.
It was a good time.
That is the thing about writing adventures. You can't really know what goes on. It's a lot of stuff I do is very much, this is the territory, and they have to go through the territory to get the goal. Right. I think it would be very fascinating for us to write an adventure on stream at some point.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm already writing a campaign setting.
Yeah. But like sitting down for 2 hours and writing a small one-shot, that would be hilarious.
Yeah, sure. I can work with that.
Yeah. But I think that covers most of what we want to cover here, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Like, focus on location and the hook and some kind of opposition. And make sure to have notes written to what you like. Experiment. Try writing it really detailed and try writing it bare bones if you are really detailed normally. And honestly, the most important thing I can say is cater to your players.
It's the most important thing when designing a campaign.
That is one of the strengths we have as a DM, is that we can both use knowledge about the players to set up a challenge for them. Like, it's really, really fun to do those kind of challenges. Like, this party doesn't have a rogue. How do they get through a locked door? But it's also fun to do that when they have a rogue, so he can look badass doing that. Right. And Irony Golem, the thing you mentioned there with like employees, I have a system for hirelings currently in my West Marches campaign. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Having like, it adds an extra dimension to combat, having someone to like care about. A thing that helps with that is like animal mounts. We have spent a lot of time protecting our like X-Beaks that we ride around in the world, right?
Well, wasn't it you who bought a spare mount?
Yeah.
And was lucky enough that you were riding your spare mount that day?
Yeah.
You were assaulted?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah. That was last session. Yeah.
I'm a genius.
Like, you guys like to keep to yourself. And you have some followers, to say at least. You have befriended the neighboring farm.
Someone adopted a child.
Adopted is a mild word.
Someone has a pseudo dragon.
It's a fairy dragon.
I have a church.
Well, you don't have it, but you lend a hand there.
Yeah.
And I think you are trying to have a bromance with the priest.
Yep, a bromance.
Like when you decided, we gotta get high together and go on adventure, and whoops, now we're burning down the forest.
Don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. My god is disappointed in me. I think that is a good note to end this on.
I think that's a good note to end this on.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, it has been absolutely delightful. I feel like I learned a lot from just pulling on you. I'm glad we got to do this. Plans for next episode, Bart. Let's talk about Barts. I'm gonna bring my guitar and we're gonna have some fun, play some campfire songs. We're gonna talk about Barts.
Fuck me.
I hope you enjoyed it. Like, follow, share, subscribe.
And have a good time.
Oh, that's the most. Fuck that other stuff. Have a good day.